Hi, can people hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, guys, welcome. Sorry for the late start. We were making sure we had everybody here. Um, but thank you everyone for coming. Okay, well, if we want to start with the introductions of our professionals we are very happy to have here, that would be awesome. Um, Josh, I don't know if you wanted to start. You can just introduce yourself and say a couple things about your position and any just beginning remarks, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how to introduce myself. I'm Josh Delson. I graduated from DePaul University in 2017. Yeah, 2017. Since that, I've just been doing, after I graduated, lots of just random game dev stuff. I could have done like QA testing, AAA stuff, etc., but I didn't feel like it. So I decided just to do other random things. During that time, I was able to work on random projects. I was able to showcase at GDC last year. I just gave my GDC talk yesterday as well, which is the Game Developers Conference, part of the Experimental Gameplay Workshop, which is known for debuting big titles like Portal, Katamari, and all this other stuff. So it's been really cool being a part of that. And since then, I've been working at Electronic Arts since November of 2019. Yeah, it's really cool. I get to work with some amazing people there. A majority of us are from Chicago. Like our studio founder was like the first game design professor at DePaul too. So it's been like really cool working with them as well as with all these other DePaul alumni who I always admired before joining the university. But that's what I do. Lots of like stuff. I do production. So I overlook and I work with every team concentration we have at the studio. We were acquired by EA in like the last year and a half-ish. So we're kind of like a startup, but with like AAA funding, which is kind of cool. And just a heads up as well, I'm not like representing EA as the thing, I'm just representing myself for this talk as well. So yeah, I could definitely give insight on that. Like that's like indie stuff. I like helped finish this Kickstarter thing with some other DePaul alumni as well that got published in 2018, I believe, which is really cool. And yeah, I used to also be an IGDA Chicago. I used to help run BitBash Chicago and all this other stuff. So yeah, I have lots of random things up my sleeve. Yeah, and also I founded the JDE as well. So like, yeah, there's that too. I
Put that on
forgot
top of it too.
bring that up. But yeah, I do like lots of random stuff. And yeah, that's that. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
mhm.
We will still be getting a few more people coming in later to answer questions, but I just kind of want to open it up to everyone here. If you have any questions for Josh about portfolio stuff or other game dev stuff, now is the time to ask them. Feel free to unmute yourself and talk using your mic, or you can put a question in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, we currently have 10 people here, correct? Well, including me. Out of curiosity,
Yes.
what are everybody that's interested? What are the concentrations or like roles that you're trying to pursue game development wise? Like, are there any programmers, designers, audio people, producers, QA people, etc.? Just curious, or is it just like just making games or something?
I can go. I'm Benji. I'm majoring in game design, and I'm looking to maybe go to grad school for tech art. That's me.
I'm Robert. I graduated in June. Graduated with a major in game design and animation minor, and I'm just like trying to figure out how to start working with all this stuff happening.
Definitely, yeah. It's a lot. I see Kate also does programming as well.
Yes.
Cool stuff. So we got designers, yeah.
My name
Also
is.
programming.
Can everyone
Wait.
hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Feel free to go.
I'm Beckett Enderhouse Custer. I'm a freshman in, or I guess rising sophomore now in game design. Not really sure what I want to focus on yet, but if it's okay, I did have a little bit of a question for you.
Yeah, feel free to.
What would you recommend a freshman in game design who's still trying to like find their footing, build their skills? What would you recommend doing in my spare time?
Yeah, definitely. For one, I would, hey Heinz, how you doing? Long time no see. But yes, is it Brackett? Is that correct? I'm trying to
Beckett.
Beckett. Sorry about that. But yeah, I would definitely want to encourage you to do game jams. That's something super easy. That's something I was always told to do. Yeah, when the JD first started, we did like, I think we did like 11 or 12 back-to-back game jams during the summer, and it was like the most drainiest like learning experience we've ever done. Because like, I think game jams are interesting because one, it's a constraint space. There's an ideal goal you got to finish within a certain time constraints, etc. But it's also like an awesome way to experiment as well. So like, for me, I would always use that to do like, I like want to learn how to do new things in Maya. I would like a game jam about that, or like, I want to learn what it's like to be a producer and like figure out burn down charts or whatever it's called, etc. So I did that as well. And it's cool too because like once you do that stuff, like itch.io is obviously the most generic place to do it. But yeah, like sometimes you could do a game jam and people are gonna like it kind of thing. Like that project I did for GDC last year was literally a game jam, and we like it was a joke and we thought it was funny. Then like extra credits, the YouTube channel really liked it, and they're like, hey, like we'll sponsor everything for you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Then like we like showcase at GDC. But I'd say that'd be one way. Another thing I would encourage you to do too, which I tell a lot of my mentees, is to find a game or a genre that you really like and try to redefine or think about a new way that you can improve it, kind of thing. As in like a lot of times when recruiters recruit you, especially like specifically in my studio, I always ask them about like, what can you bring to the table, kind of thing. Because for most teams that I've met or people I know, whenever they try to hire somebody, they're trying to hire somebody that could help as soon as possible, kind of thing. Even though obviously learning experiences are great as well. But if you're able to bring something to the table, kind of thing, and be like, hey, I know you like make RPGs or something. Check out all this RPG stuff I did. Or like, hey, you do FPS stuff. Check out all this FPS stuff I did. Like, that's like a cool common ground to like already start things. And like, it could just be like writing one pager game design documents, thinking about things. It could also just be like concepting stuff as well. Like, let's say, what's a popular game? Let's say like Warzone is a popular, well, it obviously is a popular game, but let's say like if you want to like apply to like Activision or something, and you're like, hey, I want to do level design. All my level design friends that I've worked with before, they always ended up making maps of the games they've always want to make for. Then they ended up working for them, kind of thing, or like a competitor TED or similar to that. Does that answer your question, Beckett?
Yeah, that's a great starting point. That gives me something to work with. Thank you.
Definitely. And I will also add on to that too, is always being goal orientated is really helpful too. Like you could work on a project and not know what you want out of it, and that could be something that drags on for like 6 months. I've done that before numerous times and did not take away anything from that. But like when there's a concrete goal, like as a designer, like if you can achieve that, that's already like a cool accomplishment by itself. Then you could just like tell everybody about it and be like, hey, check out this really cool thing I did, kind of thing.
Great, thank you. That really helps.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? I'm still pinging my friend. Like.
Awesome. Just gonna take a quick second. Heinz has also joined us. Thank you for being here. Me, Benji, and Alexis are on the JDE board. Just to let everyone know. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourself really quick, just give a quick snippet of like why you're here, what you can help with, anything like that. That'd be awesome.
Sure. I hope everyone's doing well. I've been teaching at DePaul for the last 6 years, mostly focused on game art. I also come and still am in the game industry for way too long, embarrassingly long. 1993, I think, is when I started. So I'm an old man in a young person's body. Worked on a bunch of games, from really tiny games to big, giant corporate AAA games to indie games. And most of my work is focused on environment, world building, camera, lighting, atmosphere, that kind of stuff. But I've dabbled in a whole bunch of other stuff too. So I don't know how I got here. I accidentally clicked on a link and somehow there I am. So.
Awesome, thanks.
Awesome, perfect timing. Luis, what's up?
Oh, hey. Yeah, sorry about that. I got dragged into a quick work meeting. So yeah, my bad.
Yeah, we're currently doing intros if you'd like to introduce yourself. Also a nice hoodie as well.
Okay, so yeah, hi. My name is Luis Sprito. I'm a mission designer at Respawn Entertainment. Currently working on Medal of Honor. Before my current job, I was working as a game designer at 2K. Before that, Level 5, and I'm currently on the board of IGDA Los Angeles. Which I guess this group is like from Chicago, so isn't really relevant. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Just so everyone know, Kate, Benji, and Alexis are all on the JDE board. So we're very glad that you all are here, that you all could make it out today. So yeah, if anyone else has other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any of them, of the guest speakers we have here. You can do it in the chat as well. And we also have some other questions if people don't have anything specific. Give it a couple of seconds.
May I please speak?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so one thing that crossed my mind when you were discussing about how you can redefine a genre in video games is how much your creativity could expand in terms of other how do you call it, fields of like animation or art, etc. So like, how would you compare like being creative and coming up with really cool ideas in games compared to say like a movie or a show?
That's a good question. Oh man, Luis, do you have any insight on that? I was talking about like we had a designer Beckett that was asking about like ways that they could like experiment or try new things in their free times that could be helpful to themselves. And I was like, oh yeah, like trying to like maybe look at a genre kind of thing and like reevaluate it, redo it in a different way kind of thing, etc. Yeah. Can you re-paraphrase the question again?
Okay, so what I was asking was how do you think being creative and when making or designing games is different compared to creating ideas for shows or movies?
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
I can definitely chime in on this one.
Please do.
Yeah. So back at Level 5, the company is known for kind of like making games and anime, and so every project that we worked on was like, okay, you design the game, but then how does it apply to like a TV show? How does it apply to like merchandise? And the creative process wasn't too different switching between those two mediums. Um, it it just kind of came down to how you inspire yourself, and then how you kind of like assess the problems that need to be solved by like your creative work. So in a game, as we all know, it's like, oh, like how does it play, what is the player feeling in this sense. If you're in the production side, it's like, how do we get this done. It depends on like the discipline, but for something like a show, it really kind of goes the same way. The only difference is just the format. I guess just broadly answering that.
It's interesting. So I guess the best way to describe it is to look at different perspectives, and no matter what kind of project you're working on.
Yeah, it. I can't speak for everyone, but everyone's going to have their own way of approaching a creative project. It kind of just comes down to how do you make that uniquely yours. How do you bring your background and experience to that project, and have a creative output that is seen.
That's cool. Thanks a lot for answering.
I think games are different because on a TV show or movie, creative is really driven so much primarily from script, from storyboarding. The process of making a film and a TV show is, I would say, much more linear, for lack of a better term. And I think with games, what I found is that everybody has ownership of a certain area, but they can easily bring their own creative influence to that area, and even create new opportunities, discoveries, things that add to the game that weren't necessarily planned. So I think it's a little bit more wide open from my experience, and people have a lot. I think, a lot more opportunity to contribute new ideas and concepts to a game than they could possibly for a TV show and a film. Not that it doesn't happen there, but I just find, games there's way more moving parts. You have programmers, designers, artists, and you've got the opportunity there for a lot of people to just iterate ideas and, experiments and kind of research and bringing new things to the table. So.
Yeah, adding on to that as well. I was taking if y'all have heard of Masterclass before, that thing you pay a certain amount of. Will Wright's the creator of Sims. He has a really cool course, and I think chapter 2 or his second class talks a lot about how video games overlaps with so many different mediums, as in architecture, story writing, acting, etc. Those are all different things that could overlap in there, but also be different at the same time, which is really cool. So if you have the time and the resources, definitely would encourage it. If not, there's probably some talks or something or articles related to that you can find on Google or something.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So kind of reeling it back into portfolios, is kind of a related question, is what a portfolio would look like for a game designer position or a similar kind of position, and how would you show off those kinds of skills that aren't necessarily visible, and then maybe more abstract, how you could show that off in a portfolio. Any advice about that?
Yeah, one thing that's I literally just right now is I just Googled Luis Sprito and Luis, I just went to your website. But I think one thing that's really helpful, especially for designers, is being able to make a first impression in an accessible way with your portfolio. I've met a lot of people before that's had really cool looking portfolios, but they were really hard to navigate or just find the resources you need. When I open up Luis's portfolio, it's hi, I'm Luis, a mission designer at Respawn Entertainment, and it has a cool reel of what he's done kind of thing, and that's already enough for 10 seconds looking at the portfolio kind of thing. But I'm not a designer specifically, so I might not be the best person to answer that. If Heinz or Luis would have a better answer, that would be cool. Yeah.
Well, it starts with having cats on your desk. This is inspiration. I think really what I've seen from design portfolios that's really cool is, when we take and, do a mod on a game or do your own interpretation, take an existing idea, but make it different, make it your own. That opens up the door to, everything from script and story to presentation to there's a whole lot of different axes of movement for you to bring in those hidden skills. So if you're a game designer, maybe you're focused on levels or narrative design or systems design, and those are narrower things. But when you create your own interpretations of other games, or you create your own ideas for games, I think you can bring to bear so many other things, like I said, your writing abilities, or the way you stage an experience, or the way that maybe you mess around with the visual presentation. I mean, there's so many ways that you can kind of just fill in the gaps that would normally on a game team be other people in other roles, and you can kind of do it yourself, and that's kind of the cool thing about your own work, your own, like I said, you take a level, you mod it. Maybe you take a level that was designed to do one thing and you do something completely different. And then you could go and do your own audio. You can do your own art. There's a whole lot of ways for you to express yourself in that kind of work.
I would have to agree with what Heinz was saying pretty much. And thanks for the shout out, Josh, for my portfolio. Um, I I figure whenever I'm looking at a portfolio for a designer or someone who's applying to my team, I like to see that they understand the position, and then also, you know, like have skills that maybe don't exactly translate to what we're looking for, but that show that they're able to learn what we'll need from them. Um, so definitely a portfolio that answers more questions than it like poses for us. Um, Having a reel is really good, just to show like the body of work that you've done, but you know, as being a student you don't really have that privilege, and so really it just comes down to presenting the information like as well as possible. I When I started doing design, I came from a place of programming, because I was a CS student, and then I switched over to studying more games. And so a lot of my work was, here's a completed title, here's what I did on it, the kind of team composition, and then kind of like how I made a difference on that team. And I put in little bits of like, the specifics for what I was looking to work in the future. Like, oh, I talked about some of the scripting I did, I talked about some of the narrative stuff that I wrote, but it all tied into that position. And then as I was able to get more experience, I definitely sort of like tailored it into more specific roles. Now I'm more of a level designer. And so it's like, here's the full block out of my level. Here's like my thinking behind it. Here's the process I went through with my team. Because I've had more experience in jobs, I'm able to talk more about those specifics. And someone reading that will then be able to say like, oh, I see. Like they have this, few years of experience. They talk about these specifics. We can infer, X, Y, and Z about everything else, and bring this person in for an interview. So really, I get it's kind of convoluted, but it's like showing your expertise in a way that is easily parsable.
Awesome. Thank you all. Like I said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me, but I can keep going through some other ones we had. So in terms of like an actual portfolio, you're applying for a specific job. And this is kind of a general question, but would you all think it would be better to show like a wide range of skills to show you're adaptable, or should your portfolio be pretty like focused on one specific area that to show you're a master of that one thing for this particular job you're applying to?
In general, I would usually say that people should have a very specific tailored portfolio, because when you're applying to a position, more often than not, it's for a very specific role. And a lot of teams are built kind of with the intention of having this person only doing kind of the job that they applied for. There's nothing saying that they can't branch out from that, but you're not going to impress by kind of also knowing how to 3D model a bit when they are just going to hire a very talented specialized 3D modeler to do that job.
Right.
That being said, like of course, like knowing all of those other skills, especially as a designer, as a producer, makes you very valuable, because all of a sudden you can just tailor your designs more towards what they'll need. So I can design a level and be like, okay, here's like the block out, here's like the breakdown of all the assets we'll need. Like I'm taking their interests and what they're capable of into account with my work. You should think about how those other skills will make your single job better, as opposed to the myriad of jobs you can pull off with them.
Yeah, I would agree.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. I mean, I tell artists, if you're applying to wargaming, good idea to have some, tanks, or not specifically tanks, but like, that genre of art, that sort of military, guns, tanks, planes, boats. They want to find people that sort of can kind of merge into their process as easily as possible. If you're applying to Blizzard, you're going to be thinking fantasy, you're going to be thinking magic stuff, you're going to be thinking sort of their style of art. And I even say it's sometimes good to maintain multiple portfolios if you have that range of skills. Because the reality is that, and my students have heard me say this tons, is, art directors and design and dev directors are really busy people. They may take a lunch break and then, they got 45 portfolios sitting on their desk, while they're eating, and they got to go through and maybe just call out some good candidates. So, if they go to your website, land on your page, and your stuff is completely off from what that company does, chances are you wouldn't get a second look compared to someone who's got a very focused portfolio and that's kind of in the same ballpark. And so for that reason, I agree with Lewis. It's focusing your portfolio for the job that you want, applying specifically for that job instead of sending generic cover letters and sort of generic materials. You really want to show them that, man, I really want to work there, and I've put together my presentation to be very focused on what you're looking for.
Yeah, following up on that as well, I definitely agree. Yeah, definitely keep it towards what you're trying to go for. And I would say at most, if you're trying to expand on it, try to think about ways to expand it so it relates to concentrations that your team might work with, kind of thing. As in, like, my teams, I really like working with my team because even though we have artists or designers acceptable, they're also adaptable and they work really well with the other concentrations because they have like secret skills up their sleeves, which I really like a lot. And like because of that, that makes the workflow much more easier on the team. And like being able to do that in like a subtle way is something helpful too. But definitely, yeah, keep it towards the job you're going for. I used to think it was like lots of people would always say like have more of a quality portfolio versus a quantity thing because you might just have like all this extra fat that like if hiring person's looking at you, they'll like maybe spend 10 seconds looking at your page sometimes. And like, if it's too much stuff, they're not sure what you're trying to display, kind of thing.
Right. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. So would you guys consider a portfolio reel as ever finished? And if when, like, how do you know it's ready to apply for like jobs and stuff like that? It's a weird question.
I don't think it's ever finished.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Yeah. Is there like a certain position that you're trying to look for, kind of thing, or is?
I'm trying to keep it broad, but personally, I'm a like 3D artist, so maybe. But I also know that a lot of people here are programmers and game design majors as well, so maybe just like a little bit of insight into each of those, if that's not too much to ask for.
You know, I think you push it as hard as you can to get to a point, and then you apply. It's nobody ever has. I never feel like I have a perfect portfolio. I'm always trying to like figure out a way to improve it or add new work to it. You got to be brutal on yourself. You're only as strong as the weakest thing in your portfolio. So, you know, you want to you never want to stop making work. You want to be pushing yourself all the time to create new work. You want to be pushing out the older stuff that's not as strong. It's easy to get sentimentally attached to your work because you spent a lot of time on it and you like it and it's cool. But you have to really detach yourself and take sort of an art director's view of this stuff, which is, you know, does it speak to the kind of work that we're doing in the studio? Does it speak to modern techniques? You know, is it something that really has great composition and good silhouettes and good color schemes? Are you really focused on pushing that stuff hard? And then you want to cut. It's better to have 3 incredibly strong pieces in your portfolio than 7 sort of okay ones. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Just a little additional note on that. A lot of job apps, from what I've seen and what a lot of friends will say, come down to like being in the right place at the right time. And of course, like your place is your portfolio and the quality level that you have with it. But then also timing is super important. Jumping on a job as soon as it comes out and not waiting too long, because then the pool of candidates that you have to compete with gets bigger and the companies get more and more selective. You do have to kind of like make that judgment call of, oh, can I squeeze another week in and like finish a piece and put it on and make it look good, or do I just submit now with what I've got? So it's always kind of constantly evaluating your work, like Heinz said.
Okay, so it's like depends on the situation type of thing.
Yeah.
I also like to think like, yeah, I definitely agree with Heinz and Luis was saying. For me specifically, when I look at my portfolio, like at the moment, I don't like it, but like there's always a certain state where you feel good about it and like you could feel good about showing it to other people. And I think that's a good time to go like share it to other people, get feedback. And like if they really like it, stick with it and like polish it. If not, ask them why, kind of thing. And that's also really relevant too when you apply for jobs. Like sometimes if they decline you, they could totally offer feedback as well, which I've had a few times, which has been really helpful.
Okay, that's really interesting. Does anyone else have any questions regarding portfolio stuff like this? Just say it or type it into the chat real quick.
Yeah, I think Dennis Bessick, if I'm saying that right, has a question. I can read it. They were asking, they personally want to pursue a career focused on game environment, art, or modeling. They hear a lot that drawing is a valuable skill to have. How important drawing is in the games industry and where is it used?
I think it depends on the studio. I think in really sort of smaller indie studios, you wear a lot of hats and you want to be able to concept and drive your own ideas visually. In larger studios, a lot of time as an environment artist, you're working off concept art from the concept team. And I think it's less important there. You just need to be good at what you do, which is creating environment art. So it's a useful skill. I'm not an illustrator. I mean, everything I do is 3D or in Photoshop. I don't, I try to, I can create concept art, and I think I'm reasonably competent at it, but I don't have mad drawing skills. And that's never really been an impediment for me, just because most of the work that I do is interpreting. I'm a production artist, so I interpret ideas that come from concept teams, from concept artists, and realize them in 3D. And that's a valuable skill you can make a career out of. It doesn't require you to be a great illustrator. But in a smaller studio, you may not have a concept artist or a concept team, and you may need to come up with your own ideas. Additionally, you may need to just flesh out the work in a way that's visual to your team. You may want to sit in a meeting and just say, okay, look, we're designing this level, so I'm going to go over here, I'm going to sketch out some ideas. That's super, super great skill to have. So I think it all comes down to the culture of the studio and the size of the team that you're working on.
Yeah, following up on Heinz as well, that's literally describing what my studio's like. And I work hands-on with our concept artists and our environment artists, which are really small numbers. But something I'll bring up as well is, like, even if you're really good at, what was it? Yeah, like if you're really good at drawing kind of thing and you want to pursue concept art, there's also the amount of time that you could get certain tasks done as well. As in, like, you could have a really good artist and like they like make amazing concept, made like map mock-ups, character mock-ups, etc. But it could take them 6 weeks versus somebody that could do it almost just as good but get it done in 2 weeks. Usually an employer would probably hire the person that could probably get it done in 2 weeks, realistically. So there's that to keep in mind as well.
Well, thanks, Josh.
Unrelated, what is maybe the worst thing you guys have seen on a portfolio?
It's pretty distracting seeing work that isn't super specific to what the person has applied for. So for sure, like Heinz was saying before, if you have multiple skills that you are choosing to have represented in different job applications, it would be a good idea to have separate portfolios. Oh, also, sorry, dissing a company at all somewhere in your portfolio. Like if you've written a blog post in the past that's like, oh man, I wish Respawn would make Titanfall 3. I can't believe they spent time on Apex. That sucks. Maybe just like scrub that from the internet, because it maybe people from that team have like worked on another team or they're friends, and people do take their work very personally. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The worst thing I've seen in a portfolio is plagiarized work. That may sound amazing, but it's not uncommon. There's this whole group of we call industry vagabonds that are just basically trying to get work off of other people's portfolio work, and it's terrible. So we always check when we're serious about somebody, we always check and make sure it's like, that this stacks up, that it's obvious that it's their work. And that's the worst thing. I agree that inapplicable work, it may be that a studio does a number of different styles of projects. And in that case, if you're applying for a photorealism job and you're showing stylized stuff, there may still be a way for that to work. But no, it's really important to sort of tailor your portfolio to the job you want. And I would also say that that what Luis brought up is really good. Negative energy. You can project that in so many ways. You can be dissing people's work. I've been in studios where there's a negative subculture. People just sit around and grouse about the art director, and that kind of stuff is toxic. You should always steer wide clear of that. Remember that the first thing a company's going to do when you apply for a job, if they're interested, is they're going to Google you, and they're going to go through your social media. They're going to go through all of your online presence, and if your Twitter feed is like, this game sucks, or these guys could have done better on this game, or whatever, even if it's well-intentioned, if it comes off as negative, game projects are long and arduous, and we want to have people around us that are, they're emitting positive energy, they're positive people, because, it's hard work, and it can get to be intense at times. So the last thing you want is just that drain, negative drain on your team or your culture at a studio. So.
Yeah, then following up on that, I think the worst thing I've seen was somebody that does a proofread their portfolio or the resume. I've seen lots, or cover letters specifically. There's always people that always copy and paste the generic like good cover letters on Google kind of thing, and like they never actually edit the names correctly sometimes. Like I've seen someone's portfolio that copy and pasted something else and it had somebody else's name on it before, which is like really awkward, or a different project name kind of thing. Yeah, and like being able to proofread that is important. That's what I'll say.
He's got a cover letter from like Jane Doe, 123 Apple Street or something.
Yeah, like that. And like you'll meet some people, like I know somebody, I won't call them out, but I know somebody specifically that did that for like 8 different jobs, and 2 of them had the same exact text on there, which was like super awkward because it listed off a different company on both of those. And it's just like, that's really bad, especially because it's the first letter of their cover letter kind of thing. And it's like, they're not even in the same states as well. And like, yeah, it's just awkward.
I think this segues right into the next question, which is how important do you think a resume and cover letter is in your application, along with a portfolio?
Resume and sorry, Heinz, you go first.
No, please go ahead.
I think it's you have to think of your resume, cover letter, and portfolio all kind of like holistically. So if you think don't be, I guess, this super like, believing in your work, but not the right wording, but I guess ego-wise, if you think your portfolio says everything it needs to say in a job application, you're confident in it, and a cover letter is kind of like optional. Like, let's say you were applying to Blizzard and your portfolio was, character art for World of Warcraft style characters, something that maybe had like a personal story to it. That says enough that you care about the company and you have work that shows that you're kind of ready for the job. I can't speak for artists, but I've always heard that portfolio is kind of all you need. But for someone who can't represent themselves with their portfolio as well, like a programmer, maybe their work is NDA, or a designer whose personal insight on a project will really kind of like tip the scales in their favor for why they really care about a franchise or something. Like, by all means, like you have to kind of weight them all separately, and spend your time figuring that out well.
Yep, totally. Actually, your first point of contact is going to be an HR person in any medium to larger size company.
I completely forgot about that aspect too.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. Yeah.
Right. And they're not typically artists who are looking at your they're going to look at your portfolio, but the first thing they're looking at is your materials, your resume and cover letter. So you won't even get in front of a project lead or an art director until you make it past the HR person, because they're going to filter this stuff. Actually, in really big companies, your first point of contact is a computer. It's going to search your resume for keywords and look for to filter it, whether it even makes to an HR person or not. We're talking big giant companies there, but in HR, they're going to look at to see just, do you have the skill set? And in fact, what I'm seeing more often now is LinkedIn is a huge. It's really your online resume, for better or worse. So they're going to scan that first. They're going to look for experience. They're going to look for skills, and they're going to look for your link to your portfolio. And if you make it past that stage, then an art director or a design director or a dev director is going to get your materials, and they're going to say, hey, should we set up a call with this person? And they're going to look at your stuff. They're going to go right to your work, because they're going to assume HR has already screened it. They'll look at your resume. They're just going to want to know what companies you've worked at, but they're going to be interested in your work. And at that point, that's the opportunity for your portfolio, your design or art or dev work to shine. So that's, once you've made to that stage, it's going to be more about your work. But I think at a minimum, the resume, the LinkedIn that matches your resume, those are the two, that opens the door.
Yeah, definitely agree. Something to bring up as well. So like my studio, we've been, since the pandemic, we've doubled our studio size, and I've been in half of the interview processes for those. And like Heinz and Luis had a really good point about like the HR thing. I like to think as like your resume is kind of like a one-pager kind of thing, presenting that you had the credibility, and the cover letter's there to kind of personify who you are. Because like Heinz and I, obviously we don't have the same exact resume, but like if we both had the same exact resume, both gave it to HR and they both read it, the cover letter would be a huge influencer of what happens from there. Then typically what happens, they happen to the leads. The leads, like today I had a 15-minute sync with all the leads and we just looked over the resume, and like from there, that was kind of like the leeway into diving deeper into the portfolio. So it's kind of like a stepping stone thing from my perspective, but that's just like what I've been through. But definitely, yeah, like a strong resume is helpful. I will also say too, something that's been really coming up recently, I've been noticing with applicants, is make sure you have a resume that's like text accessible. I know lots of people like to try to do stuff in Photoshop, but when you like, for some HR systems, when you put it in the system, they automatically convert it to text. But like, if you have this like really gorgeous looking resume, but like it's like rasterized or flattened kind of thing, and there's like nothing there to see, like they're gonna get nothing out of it. And because of that, you'll just be cut automatically. I've seen that happen a lot, sadly, but yeah, that's my insight.
Okay, thank you.
I also just wanted to add that with resumes and cover letters, as especially when compared to your portfolio, they're used kind of like as tools in a lot of your interviews. Like it would not be uncommon for your first like interview with the team that you'd be on for them to just have your resume directly in front of you. And so they're using that to assess you because that might be the first time that they're seeing it. But also like the industry vagabonds that Heinz mentioned, a lot of people lie or embellish their information. And so making sure that there's a consistency between your portfolio and your resume, while also not saying the same things like twice, is super important. So on your resume, you can say like, oh, these were my job roles. And then on your portfolio, you can say, I did this, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Kind of as a follow-up to the resume question, you know, as students, as kind of newbies into the industry, trying to get entry-level positions where we don't necessarily have a ton of work experience, there's not a ton of stuff you could think of to put on a resume. Do you have any recommendations for the kinds of things as a student you could put on a resume that would be helpful to have? Like, is it valid to like put different projects on there as opposed to different work experiences? Kind of just aim through the lens of beginners, students, things you would recommend.
Sure. So I can sort of, I guess, talk to this a bit at length. When I was in college and then post-college, I didn't work for any companies in particular, but I spent a lot of time making games. And when you're kind of like independent contracting like that, you have the opportunity to work on a lot of projects, but you're not exactly tied to an institution. So when you sort of like represent that on a resume, it gets like a little bit tough. What I found to work was just showing, like always prioritizing the job over, where it's at. So if you just say like whatever job you're gunning for is like the job title, and then you just list the dates as usual, and then you list the organization as like independent or freelance or a contractor, then you get that out of the way, and then you can sort of separate out your resume into chunks that instead of are focusing on jobs or are focusing on projects. And so you talk about the project, you do your short little blurb, you say what you need to say, and people only really care about, or for the most part, only really care about shift projects. So prioritizing projects over like a job or like a club is definitely what you want to do. But also, like if a recruiter or like an HR person is giving you your fair shake, they'll see that you're a student and they'll be able to see, I guess, like how much of a go-getter you are versus like, what kind of resume you're trying to like slap together through like various little experiences.
Right.
Yep, totally agree. If you guys some of you were in professional practice for artists last year, and you heard my mantra, like projects, job experience, education, and then student activities, groups, that kind of thing. Put your projects up front. Make them look like a job, even if they're not something you got paid for. It's like, I worked on this film for 6 months, and this is the name of the film. This is where we did it. This was my role. Make it look like you're presenting a professional job, but it was a project. So for every game you've worked on, every project you've worked on, list those out as line items with, the standard job accoutrement, like dates and location and who you worked with, anything that's relevant. Because that's what really ultimately is what is important. We're looking for people with, project experience, and it doesn't matter whether it was paid or not, it's still important.
Yeah, something I'll bring up too, like while you're doing the projects as well, make sure that you're keeping in touch with those people that you work with. I think something really relevant, if you're doing projects or not, is just getting involved with anything in the industry related. Like Luis and I, we know each other because we both volunteered at GDC for numerous years. And like, because we have that solid connection, we're able to talk to other people. Or like if there's like somebody, like if you're applying for a job and the like teams there, like maybe somebody on their team kind of thing that could give like positive enforcements as well. But something really relevant with that too is like, one, it shows employers are just people that you are engaged with the industry a bit. Like even if you volunteer, like let's say like BitBash or like some other, some other Gamescom or some other stuff, etc. But like even if you could say that, like you could already tell people that you have different perspectives of just like what people are working on kind of thing. It's super relevant too. Yeah.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Sorry, I might be lagging a bit, but another thing kind of related to that is the idea of like connections and your network, and like kind of how important that is when stacked up against resume, portfolio, etc. How important like knowing the right people is, and also like tips you would recommend for getting out there and meeting people and making connections within the industry to help you get along further.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, all the above. Heinz, maybe you might have more insight since you've been in the industry longer than both of us.
I mean, okay, so COVID sucks because it's broken so many things, but when jobs open up in a studio, usually the first thing is, who do we know? And who are we aware of? And so I always say, put as much energy into your work as you do as to raising your visibility in the industry. So for better or worse, social media is important. Getting getting on it, starting to follow people that you respect. All the studios you want to work for, you should be researching them. So who works at these studios that are in key positions, finding out where are their portfolios so you can get up to speed on the work that they've done. Following them if they're on social media, carefully but gently starting to interact with their posts. And then, of course, building your own presence on social media. That's like one axis of movement, which is you have to be visible. Twitter is a horrible, toxic place, but unfortunately, there's a heck of a lot of game artists and game designers and game programmers on Twitter. They're actively discussing game dev topics. They're sharing work. They're interacting. You don't want to come in really heavy and strong on that stuff, but start liking those posts. Start complimenting work. Start making yourself visible in those threads. Eventually, people are going to check out your profile, and they're going to potentially even check out your work. This is not a fast process. It's something you should be starting right away, because it takes months, even years, to build up momentum on social media before you're really visible. So that's one thing. Obviously, user groups, anything you can get involved with that has to do with the city you live in. Chicago has Indie City Games and BitBash and has all these great activities, and hopefully those things will start up in earnest again, but sometimes they're online. They have Industry Night in Chicago. All of these things are activities you should be getting involved in, especially once they get inertia again after this stuff, because this is all about contacts. It's all about networking. It's all about making connections with people, either virtually or in person. And again, it's not an immediate thing, but you do it over time, and you're consistent about it, and you start to build up relationships with other people. And at the same time, ArtStation is a social network, right? These online portfolio places also have blogs and, followers and people that interact online. So you want to hit all of that stuff. You want to spread yourself out, hit all these forums, these social networks, anywhere you can to begin that process of building that web of connections of people. As it happens, a lot of times jobs come down Twitter before they're even on job sites. It's like, hey, we're looking for somebody for a modeler, spread the word, so, dedicate a little part of your day just to getting a refresh on what those people are doing. So I say follow artists, designers, or programmers, or all those things at the studios you want to work with. Check your feed every day for opportunities. Slowly start to interact with those people. That to me is like a huge thing. As part of becoming part of a community. So when a job pops open, they'll be like, oh, yeah, we saw this guy, this gal, she had a portfolio the other day. All she does is sushi, but it's amazing. And like, we're doing a food-based game. Like, you never know. Like, it's just, there's so many ways that you can make yourself connected and visible. That's, to me, is almost as important as the work that you do. So that when they say that they say success is when preparedness meets opportunity. So when opportunities come up and you're prepared and you're visible, that's your best chance to get a great career. I could go on, but.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I could add on to that as well because I love networking and have had lots of success stories. I will one thing I always like to encourage people to do is also like, everyone in the industry are people and the industry is really small kind of thing. As in like one day you'll just like pass by Kojima or something. You're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Or like, oh, it's Tim Schafer kind of thing. Like it's really small and it's really cool how like connected you can be with those people kind of thing. But also since the industry is so small as well, it's like a really good opportunity to make sure that you have like a solid, it sounds really generic or like cheesy, but like a brand about who you are kind of thing to other people. Because eventually over time, the more you get involved with stuff, there'll be like more, hopefully positive word of mouth things of you. Like how I got my current job was like, last year I showcased at all these places across the US and like a lot of people were like, oh, this guy's really cool. Then one day, like this person from El Salvador was like showing off a game at E3 and he's like, hey, I need someone with like a ticket or like to help show off the game. And like people just added me as this person and I was like, oh, okay, sure. Like, I'll do it. I met this person once, like fun. And like I went there, it was great. Met all these awesome people I've always like wanted to meet kind of thing. Then like grabbed lunch with like one of my industry mentors. Then like he just offered me this job that I have right now over lunch. And then kind of follows up with like Luis is like, sometimes you're gonna be at the right place at the right time kind of thing. Because there's always opportunities out there. You just like need to step out there and like hopefully, I don't know, I can't like confirm this for everybody, but like yeah, like if you step out there, there's always, I should say always, there's sometimes always a cool opportunity.
Yeah, sometimes you're on these projects for like a really long amount of time with these people that you're seeing for like 12 hours a day, hopefully less than that, and like things can be really stressful and they really want to work with someone who they know they vibe with and that they've met before. My current job, I didn't know it at the time, but I actually kind of accidentally got referred by people who were already on the team because I had met them at drink ups and like meetups, like months, maybe even like a year before with one of them. But when my resume, like slid across the desk, they were like, oh, we know this guy. He's pretty cool. And I already met all of the other requirements of the job. Like I had the technical skills and the design sense, but that was what pushed it over to kind of like expedite my application throughout the process. And it just kind of goes to show like how much that impression can make, because I didn't know anyone on the team, at least I didn't think so. And when I went in for my interview, they're like, hey, Luis. And I was just like, what? Have we met before? And they're like, yeah, we met, like, we thought you were a cool guy. I was like, oh crap, I forgot their names, shit. But it ended up working out. So like, yeah, you never know. You just be a nice person, and people, I guess, will give you a job and also forgive you for forgetting their names.
And that brings up a great point, which is your online presence is your brand, you know, and I hate to use that word, it's kind of a crappy corporate word, but people are like, what do you mean by branding? What is your brand? I say, brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so make sure that, like, if you want to post about, like, yeah, we never really landed on the moon, or, you know, fluoride is a government CIA plot, like in the water, like, put that on some other Twitter feed that's not attached to your name. Like, make sure that, you know, your online presence is relentlessly positive, game dev focused. You know, it's something where when people look at your online presence, that it, you know, exudes positive attitude and sort of just a desire, a burning passion to do what you love to do, and save the crazy stuff for some other forum. You know, because again, people want to work with people who are you know, compatible with long projects and stressful situations. So
Thank you all. That's awesome. That's very applicable advice. So you can start working on it right away.
So do you guys think it's healthy to compare work to professionals? Because I know, like, going in with all social media and stuff like that and having an internet presence and brand, it's really easy to see professional work on the internet and stuff. So do you think it, like, how do you think that affects people who are just trying to start out? Because sometimes it might, like, make them kind of depressed or like, I'm never going to be that good or whatever. But do you think it's also important to have that also, like, available to someone who's, like, starting to learn and stuff? Sorry, that was everywhere.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because and like the little side point, it is definitely necessary to compare your work to professionals because, like it or not, like even at the associate level, you're going to be competing with people who have already worked jobs in the industry, have like projects, you know, but it's not necessarily healthy from like a mental health standpoint because you don't kind of see you know, all of the work that they did to get to the point where they are now. And so like you kind of have to just kind of like figure out those sort of like mental gymnastics to put yourself through to, you know, like keep going. It's like, okay, this is the quality level that I can hit in X amount of time. And then when you do that, that is when your time and place meet up. But you take that time between like now and then to you know, hopefully because you're spying on these professionals and their work so much, you know, steal as much as you can, process and like info wise. Yes, that's my answer.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And by that I mean reach out to them, because not only can you network with them, but you can potentially get some pretty cool mentors out of it. And I've done that exact same thing and been through that whole like mental rut. So good advice.
That's kind of surprising because it's like I would assume if I was going to like see someone who's worked on like AAA game and DM them, I would assume that they would get annoyed. Like, what is your opinion on that type of like interaction with like a random person?
Heinz, I'm sure in your storied career so far, you've probably run into this, but they just want someone who reaches out to them, who treats them like a human being. It's really intense having someone put expectations on you of like, you know, all the knowledge that you have and like the games that you've worked on, or like treat you differently, especially in a networking situation. If you just go up to them and you talk to them as if they're like another person you've met who just happens to have made like the games you want to work on, they will, I think, respect you and give you more of their time. But also, one of the things that people talk about with when it comes to mentorship a lot is providing kind of like a canvas so that that mentor can like, you know, reaffirm the things that they know, but then also like teach another person how to think like them. And I guess that's kind of like a 50-50 kind of thing of providing catharsis for that person. But then also it's like most people think the way they do things is like the right way to go about them. And more people who also do things the way they do them will mean kind of like the more accepted and respected their, you know, style of work is. So it's just proving, or I guess showcasing how you can bring that mentor value or that person who you're networking with, but in like a not scummy way, of course.
Just be polite.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the main thing is in the industry, we just, you know, the people I've seen be very successful and build a large network are just just treat everybody pretty much as if they're the same. We don't try to classify people or say, oh, I really don't want to talk to industry pros. Like for me, I find I learn a lot from people that I've never met before, and I have no idea what their background is. So they might reach out to me on Twitter or whatever, and I'll just be like, hey, yeah, show me your stuff, or yeah, I'll be happy to answer that. And a lot of times that leads to really great connections and great relationships that you didn't even predict. So
yeah, and to give a plug to what Heinz was saying earlier, LinkedIn is a really awesome resource for that, honestly. Just be genuine and ask them for actual advice.
So going along with that, would you say that there is a lot of value in kind of the cold emailing people in the industry and like sliding into their DMs, I guess on LinkedIn or Twitter? I guess like not prompted, or I don't know. I don't know if my question made sense. Sorry.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense. I don't think you ever really want to cold email anyone. Like Heinz said, make sure you build up like some sort of familiarity with them so that they aren't just ignoring your email like at first glance. If it is just liking their posts on something or just commenting on like a Gama Sutra article, it's like the little steps, or just having work on your portfolio that makes them see some of themselves in you. But it never hurts. It depends on the person.
Yeah. And I would just say, brevity is the soul of wit. So if you're going to slide into somebody's DMs, don't hit them with 10 paragraphs of life story stuff.
Yeah.
Just like get to the point. Like, hey, really admire your work. I'm working on something similar. I'm running into this problem, or I just have a quick question about it. So just keep it really concise. Understand people are generally busy, but they're usually open to discussing ideas and thoughts as long as it doesn't become like a huge commitment or an overwhelming amount of information, right? So keep it simple, short, to the point, be polite.
Yeah, and something to add on to that as well is like if you really like their work, have them or encourage them to talk about themselves. Like you can be like, hey, I really like this prototype you did or something, or like I love that map you did on there, kind of thing. Like, can you tell me with an extent of like blah 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 blah? Because they're probably like have some crazy story behind it and be like, yeah, like this is something blah 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 blah, and that could be a really solid transition to like having them maybe give you advice, kind of thing.
It's true. I have people that still contact me from about games I made in 2001. Like, man, I really like Mech Warrior, and like just want to let you know this was awesome, and like, what do you think about this? And that's fun. I mean, I'm happy to jump in and just say, yeah, this is how we did the animation system for that thing or whatever. Like, those kind of quick, if it's something I can interact and get in and out, I'm always happy to do it. It's usually when somebody, contacts me and they're like, again, it takes them 4 paragraphs to even get to their point. Then it starts to become like, so I think most people are just, they like to interact, but they don't want it to be like a 2-hour commitment. So.
Yeah, keep it simple. That's what I always like to say.
Oh, makes sense. Let's see. So this question is kind of like for, I think there's like recent grads, I suppose, but it's like if you can't find a position what you'd like to do like right outside of college, is it better to start off at a good company doing something else and working your way into the field, or should you just hold out for something that you really want to do instead?
Very contrived answer, but that is going to depend on your socioeconomic position. Sounds really dumb, but like I've seen, like, obviously if you need a job, like there's been like no artist in history, I feel like, hopefully, who hasn't like had to at least, like hold down something else while also pursuing their art. I've known as many people who have, like done the route through QA as have like taken time off after they graduated to basically just scrap their whole portfolio and then like start anew. because like hopefully by the end of like your time or whatever, you kind of realize like all of the things that you can improve, and then you rebuild out your good like 3 to 4 like pieces that you can like show off that really represent your skill level. I mean, any route works. It just depends on which you feel the most confident in. So if you feel like you can do production or QA or programming and then transition, like go for it. But if you want to spend the time and kind of like reinvent, I guess, your art, like that's cool too. They're all valid is what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's hard these days. You know, I have a lot of students who graduate and don't find anything in like in the first year. And it's tough. It's really hard, and it's demoralizing, and it's creates anxiety and depression for a lot of people. And the only hope I can give them is one, persistence pays off, and socioeconomic is really important part of that, because we all have to, you know, get by. So a lot of times you have to do what you've got to do to make ends meet, and sometimes it has nothing to do with what you went to school for, at least for a while. So that can be really hard, but it's a mistake. If you really believe in what you want to do, and if you're really passionate about it, and you're working really hard to produce work, don't give up. You might try 100 companies and get rejected by all of them. That's not unusual. It's about timing. It's all these different factors that kind of come in to make that connection. So I just tell people, don't give up. Keep at it, but the most important thing is don't waste that time. If you've got to work a day job, you got to do that, but then it's hard, but try to do some work towards your portfolio, or work towards, you know, building a better online presence, or whatever it is. Try to do a little bit every day so that you're advancing your case. You're making some forward progress, and it will happen. I mean, it's just a result of being persistent, being relentless, and forcing yourself is really what it takes a lot of times in the face of what you perceive as monumental difficulty. Force yourself to keep working on your craft, making it better, posting a little bit more, connecting with more people. It's a cumulative process, and at some point the scales are going to tip, and you'll find that opening. Like I said, where preparedness meets opportunity, and it will click. Once you give up, once you lose hope, then it won't happen. There's no way it can happen, because you've stopped. You know, so I just keep telling people, keep pushing. It's hard, it sucks, but you got to keep doing it. And your friends can help you, your colleagues can help you. This is why, again, networking is so important. Always be working with on something with other people, project, game, whatever it is. Keep that momentum, keep that energy going, and doors will eventually open. And I've seen it happen tons of times. I knew an artist who she was really great. This is when I taught down at Columbia, and nothing happened for her like the first year and a half after she graduated. And she was like at the end of her rope. But she kept at it. She kept posting new art every day. She kept her social media alive. And just one day, something happened at NetherRealm, and she got a job there. And now it's like nothing ever happened, you know. And obviously, it's not a case for 100% of people, but I've seen persistence pay off. This is what I'm saying.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
It's very inspiring.
Okay, this is another question that's kind of specific to right now. But in terms of the current situation with COVID and everything, maybe just a little bit explain like how that has affected the industry, or maybe your job specifically, for people who are graduating students trying to start, you know, in this kind of new environment that we're in. What does it look like? And do you think that like now that there's more opportunities to work from home, that'll open up more opportunities for like freelance and remote workers even into the future?
I've seen a lot more remote work, and that's actually an opportunity, because you don't have to move somewhere and make that whole relocation thing. There's a lot more remote work. There's a lot more acceptance of people, who are generally not, in a city with that company, going down to their office, doing that stuff. Like all of that stuff kind of been pushed aside for now. So that's the good part. I think the bad part of COVID really is just about our social groups, our ability to have, game jams together and bit bashes and, special interest groups like Indie City Games getting together. That was a great situation. So some of these have gone virtual, which is nice, but it's not the same as being able to walk over to someone and make that face-to-face connection that you could do so easily. So I think it's kind of a trade-off between, jobs being offered fully remote and your lack of ability to interact. So this is why your online thing has gotten even more important,
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Luis, were you going to say something? I saw you had your mic.
Oh,
Give a
yeah,
spiel.
I think, sorry, I just accidentally sent myself an email. I think Heinz kind of sort of talked about it fairly well. I personally, I guess, just seeing everything and seeing how companies are reacting to COVID and everything that's happening, it is definitely going to be temporarily easier, I think, to look for and get jobs just because, they're not worrying about reload and everything. But what remains to be seen is how many companies are going to actually remain in this sort of like remote friendly sort of position. I know Respawn specifically is with at least employees who are currently at the company is very like, hey, if you end up moving because like costs and things and then you need to stay remote after everything is kind of over, they understand. But I know a lot of companies now in their job applications are saying like, hey, it is expected for you to move maybe like start of like 2021. So it's kind of like a yes and no sort of situation. That being said, all of the remote work is really cool because now I personally like am thinking about what I'm going to do after my current role, and I can consider places that are, like international, because it's like, oh, I can work for them and not have to worry about visas and moving or anything, which is a really cool idea. So, yeah.
Yeah, following up on Luis, like personally from my studio experience, I'm really thankful that we planned for a pandemic situation before the thing actually hits. And we were a third remote people as well. So like we're able to transition really smoothly, which is nice. But the cool opportunity about that, which Luis was touching upon too, is like it gives a larger opportunity for more studios to take advantage of more virtual workers. Like we have people in Sweden now working for us, Canada, Brazil, etc., which I think is like the coolest thing ever. And like that would have not happened like if this pandemic would have happened. But something interesting that our team specifically is currently talking about is like reevaluating how the actual studio work week will be like once we get back on that thing. Because like now that we have a solidified work from home situation, we're like evaluating, is it possible or is it even like worthwhile doing like a 4-day week and 1 day from home kind of day, or like 3 days in the office, 2 days at home kind of thing, etc. Because there's pros and cons of working from home as well. Yeah, but it definitely affects like team morale too for all the extroverts or just people that like sitting in the same room with other developers and talking to them versus having to schedule like a Zoom call or like start a Slack chat to like figure one tiny thing out they could have figured out in 30 seconds in person.
Right. Cool. Yeah, it's all super interesting. It's crazy to see how everything is like shifting and people are reevaluating how we do everything. But yeah, I definitely feel like I'm missing out on the networking part of it and just going and talking to people. I miss that a lot.
Definitely. I mean, there's no more GDC. There's no E3. It's like other the PAX. I mean, there's so many great trade shows where we could just all get in a room together and talk and enjoy it and eat and drink together. Like to me, that was part of the culture. I mean, and it definitely had its downside because there's a lot of stories about that. But in general, human to face-to-face contact is it's a stronger connection. It's hard to create. I think the biggest thing, it's hard to create trust on it over a video call. It's harder, I should say. It takes more time than being in an office together every day and going to lunch together, doing all the stuff that like was the culture of pre-COVID video game development. So I definitely miss that, and I wish this thing had never happened. But at the same time, studios are rejiggering how they work with people, and the remote opportunities are much more. I mean, there was a time where no one could even consider working remotely in a game studio. Like it would just be considered like you're a slacker or something. Like, why won't you come into the office? But the truth is like this is the reality now. So capitalize on it. Work on your video skills, your ability to relate to people, being very concise and very direct about your interactions. And again, it's part of creating a presence that people feel good about and they want to work with you. So I think there's opportunity there that wasn't there before, which is good.
Awesome. Thank you. That is very interesting to hear y'all's take on it. So, let's see. I guess if there's no other questions, we can start to wrap up things soon. One thing I just wanted to ask was, and this is super generic, and we've been talking a lot about just things that people should be doing, but just if you could give like one piece of advice to like as current college students, like the best things that you could do to be more ready for the industry, like upon graduation or anything like that, like how to like tips on maybe internships or just like the kinds of things you should be doing. I know that's basically what we've been talking about the whole time, but just kind of like as a student, the best practices, best things you could be doing in your free time to get ahead, just as a final push.
Josh?
Yeah, I can give my answer. What I always tell mentees I work with, especially like recent ones, is I always tell them like, if you're pursuing game development and you're trying to pursue a field, think about who you want to like be kind of thing, or like what kind of thing you want to be, and like how you can surpass that kind of thing in the little chunks that you can, and to also just be goal oriented kind of thing. Like I meet a lot of people that want to do production, and I'm just like, yeah, like tell me why you're better than me at my kind of thing, because like if you're better than me, then the applicant, like someone's gonna hire you like on the spot kind of thing, or like if someone's amazing at level design kind of thing, like how can you be better than that level designer? Or like there's always like a certain extent that you can push yourself, but like if you can think about a concrete goal and how you could go past that, I think that's like something really relevant, even if it's a tiny thing kind of thing. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would say on top of that, on top of everything that's been said, is definitely think about like your timeline for, when you want to be in a good place with your portfolio, when you want to, land your first job, and really think about how much time it takes to go through an application, to maybe make the changes that you want to make to your portfolio, to maybe start and finish the kind of project that you think would like clinch like a job at, but like a specific company, and plan around that. Because I think a lot of people like to think ahead or try to rush through that process. And when you're ready for it, like the job process can go by like super quickly. I've seen, or I've been in interviews where it took maybe like a week to apply, hear back, interview, and then like get the role. But at the same time, it's like depending on the studio. Now I'm not going to name any names, but a few studios here in LA, you might not hear back from the job for like 3 months, and then you do your first interview. They get back to you 2 weeks later. They're like, we're gonna like see, like stay on the hook or whatever, and then like you get denied, and then 5 months later they're like, actually, okay, here's the job, and they expect you to kind of just like be around for that. That's like valuable time, I guess, to work on your portfolio and do work for other companies, smaller companies, stuff that more fits your schedule. But I guess it's realizing that all of these companies are like different entities and have like weird like quirks to like their applications and how you like know the people there, and taking that into account when doing your apps and everything. It's super important.
Yep. My advice comes down to this: make games. In lack of any other opportunities, in the face of all the doubt and uncertainty you have about the job market, make a game. It doesn't have to be a big game. It can be a small game. But we live in an amazing time where any of us can download Unity, Unreal, or whatever tool, and we can start making a game. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen start that way from nothing and then just sort of like post their progress on Twitter and start to build up interest and a following. Look what Chris Way did with Sausage Sports Club, or look what William Kerr did with Manifold Garden, or any of these people who just said, you know what, nothing's happening for me, so I'm just going to make my own thing. And they just built up that inertia over time, built up a following, and suddenly they shipped a real game. And that is your best credential for finding a job, hands down. I mean, we can all make stuff in Maya, we can make stuff offline, but if you can show work in a game and be consistent about it, that's hugely powerful. And even better, make gaming with a friend or friends, and that way you build up that inertia of having, more people contributing. So, I've seen so many people unlock the door of the game industry just by just doing it themselves and going through that process of discovery. And yeah, it's hard, it's arduous, it's long. You have to learn a bunch of skills you don't know, but hey, now you have those skills, and you're more attractive because of that. And if you make it a semi-public process, you're posting your progress, just saying, here, this is something I'm working on. And next week it's like, hey, I added a character this week, or hey, now I have this cool effect. Like you get this inertia going, and I think you make your own reality, in that sense. So make games.
Awesome. That's all really, really good advice. Yeah, I think a lot of times I struggle with like thinking too big picture of like, this is where I want to be really far down the line, but it's like, it's a day by day grind and do stuff day by day to get you there. So yeah, that's awesome. Awesome advice.
There's an old joke, right? It's like, hey, I want to be a game developer. And it's like, okay, make a game. Boom.
Right.
You're a game developer.
Right. Exactly. It's really that simple. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll give a couple more times.
Ooh.
We have one more question.
I was literally about to close with this, but then Dennis brought it up. Modding games absolutely counts in the category of making games. Depending on the tools, especially with something like Source and like Half-Life 2, Portal, Left 4 Dead, like that is an engine that, at least Valve and Respawn still use. And it's just all about presentation. If someone sees that you're able to make a game in like Source or make a mod for it, it's like, wow, this person knows how to design. They know how to pick up an engine with like no documentation whatsoever. They know how to script. Like that speaks like leaps and bounds for you. And that goes for like any engine that has any kind of like modding tools. So yes, absolutely. And if Heinz doesn't believe that, then whatever. But I at least got my start in like game modding. So we'll always vouch for it.
Yeah, I was going to bring up DePaul used to do that with their game mod class. I don't know what they do now, but also something to bring up too as an actual DePaul alumni. I wanted to bring up, like, DePaul has a lot of cool resources. You just need to find them. And if it's like not something that you can't find, like make it happen. That's literally what this JDE thing started for. Like there was no resource for students that want to make games, that come together, talk about games, etc. So I was just like, whatever, I'll do it. It came to Heinz, all these other faculty. I'm like, hey, like we need people to kind of like give us advice. Like we want to do game jams. We just want people to talk to us, etc. Like do that. And like the resources might not be in the CDM. You can look in other colleges or departments too. There might be other people there that could connect you to something that you might need, which I always find really helpful. So definitely take advantage of that during your time at DePaul, because there's all these crazy resources that you might not even know about literally until your senior year, which happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, totally agree. Modding, especially if you just somehow fundamentally shift the experience or change it. You know, I saw someone who took MechWarrior 5, the recent MechWarrior game, and modded it to be more like Mech Commander, so it's RTS, you're above the battlefield, and completely changed the experience. Like anything like that just shows that A, you got vision and creativity, B, you dug into the technical details and pulled apart the tech and reassembled it into something different. Those are all things that the industry looks for and people look for in developers. So you don't have to start from scratch, I guess is the point. If you can realize your idea more quickly by taking the Half-Life engine or Gary's mod or whatever the tool is. Hell, what is that PlayStation game? The one Dreams? Yeah, I've seen people do insane stuff with that. Like, it's just a matter of if you have an idea you think is compelling, you should go after it, and that's you already have a tool and a content set to work there. It makes it that much faster. So.
Mm-hmm. That's actually something I want to comment on. I rescind my previous statement of what is the most important thing for students now. But this is specifically for designers. You don't have to create a whole game to prove that you are a good designer, especially for designers. And this is not throwing shade at any of the other disciplines. You have like the hardest time showing off your skills because everything is either like super on paper and people don't really like to read, or it requires like a certain time investment with like creating like a whole project. Modding is a good shortcut for this, but also like if you're a level designer, showing off like a block out is something you can do entirely yourself without like a team. If you're a systems designer, putting together a system map for a system that you're working on. If you're like gameplay oriented, maybe taking the time to script a bow and arrow that a character can shoot and then it damaging like targets is something that's cool. You can show off like what someone could see maybe on like a Twitter feed as maybe like 5 GIFs showing like, oh, haha, this is like cool stuff that this person makes. You don't always have to make a full game to, have a portfolio in games.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. I think unless we have any more questions, we're good to start wrapping up. Awesome. Okay. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out. We have recorded this, so you can go back and watch it later. And for those of you who weren't here and are watching it now, hi. We recorded this for you. A huge thank you to our guest speakers. It was super insightful hearing things from you. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your days to come and help us and talk to us. That's awesome. And thank you to the students who came to this event to listen from everyone. So yeah, unless anyone has any more closing remarks to say, closing questions, that about wraps it up. People are free to leave. And yeah, we really appreciate everyone who came out. It was super helpful. I learned a lot. So thank you all. Everyone stay safe.